Good morning, everybody. I'm Robert Scheer, and this is your 6 AM Wake Up. At the outset of these podcasts, I explained to you that the purpose of them was to talk about 12-step program and by way of how it has helped me in my life and how I have witnessed it help so many other people in their lives. I wanted to discuss the principles in the 12-step program and how you can apply them to your life. Why? Not because I think all of the listeners have substance abuse problems or serious issues, but because I sincerely believe that these principles can help improve your relationships, your self-esteem, help you achieve your goals and objectives, and help you achieve a greater spiritual connection and overall happiness. That's a tall order. I certainly have experienced this personally in my life and witnessed it with many others. And along the way, and this might sound a little bit cheesy to some, and I want to be careful that I'm not trying to impose my views on others, but I have had what I would consider to be spiritual awakenings. Not many, and when they've happened, they've been pretty dramatic. But the most important one, the most dramatic one, occurred very early in my experience with recovery, and I wanted to take a minute just to share it with you. So I really didn't have any experience with 12-step programs. I'd never heard of Narcotics Anonymous. But I knew that my life was out of control, and obviously my family knew my life was out of control, and they performed at some level what I would call an intervention. And they caught me at the right time, and they convinced me to go to a facility, a place to get some R&R. It was north of Baltimore. And I really thought I was going to something that was more akin to a Miraval or some type of spa facility. And I certainly embraced that. I felt like I really I really deserved some time off. I was actually, as everybody knew, shouldering the world. I had all these responsibilities for my business, for my children, for my wife, and a lot of it wasn't going very well. And I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world, and that if you were me, you would probably be drinking and using a lot of drugs too if you had all of my problems. So that was my view of the world. So when I went to this facility, I didn't really know what I was getting into. In fact, I was so naive, I packed a bathing suit because I thought there'd be lots of swimming and steam rooms and things like that. I packed a smoking jacket. I don't know where I got that. I never, to my knowledge, had ever owned a smoking jacket. I packed a cowboy hat because I thought, well, there could be some horseback riding, and I loved horses. So that just gives you a sense for how uneducated I was on recovery and 12-step programs. So the first few days were a blur to me. I was detoxing, and I was in their detox ward. And this was a ward that was really a medical ward. It was supervised by medical professionals. And there was a lot of us in a dorm room. And we weren't tied down or anything, but it was rubber sheets. And it was a lockdown facility. Not that you couldn't leave because it was voluntary, but because they just didn't want you to be unsafe. So they kept an eye on you. And I don't really have any memory of that other than being very, very sick. A lot of pain, a lot of sickness, very similar to a really serious flu. So eventually, I was sort of let into the general population, and this is where my spiritual awakening occurred. I was at table 25. I'll never forget it. There was a group of men at this table, and I met them for the first time, and I was feeling pretty unstable, pretty fragile, pretty disoriented. I remember I got there for breakfast, but I got there late and they locked the door. And that just stunned me. lock the door. Don't you know who I am? I'm a big success. I'm late, but I want breakfast. That didn't matter. So I did get coffee. I was sitting at the table. It was bitter cold, and this facility was on the water, and the water was frozen, and everywhere you looked was snow and ice. And it was a brilliant winter day, winter morning. So I was there in January and February. So I don't know, this was maybe January 15th, early in the morning, bright sunshine, reflecting off of the ice and the snow. And you know how when you look out into something bright, you look at the sun and it's bright and reflective, you start to get spots, right? So I was just sitting there at the table, really very disoriented. And I closed my eyes and I had those spots. And the spots were passing by my eyes. And the spots started to change. I saw my wife in those spots. I saw my kids in those spots. I saw my mom. I saw my deceased father. I saw my deceased grandmother, who I was very close to. I then saw my deceased grandfather, who died when I was 3. I have no real memories of him. And then it got even more interesting. I started to see what were obviously in my mind ancestors, other relatives of mine. These were people that had predated my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-aunts. In fact, I was named after one of them, Uncle Bob. I never met him. He died years before I was born. But his image passed by in these spots, and I knew it was him. And I knew who every single one of them was. And I knew in that instant they were sent. They were sent to reassure me that everything was going to be okay. And to just trust that I was going to be fine, I was going to get through this, and that my life was going to get better. And I've carried that feeling with me now for 22 years. This sense that no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what occurs, that everything is going to be okay. And that was the most significant moment that I had really in my entire life up to that point spiritually. And I just wanted to share it with you. Thanks for listening to my thoughts for the day.